Abandoned toy factories where nightmares come to life. Welcome back to the abyss, my fellow darkness devotees. Tonight we delve into the chilling world of haunted dolls, those vacant eyes staring into your soul, those tiny stitched-on smiles promising nothing but dread. We've unearthed 3 horrifying tales of abandoned toy factories, places where childhood dreams once took shape, now echoing with the laughter of the damned. Each story a chilling reminder that some toys are best left untouched. Turn off the lights, crank up the volume, and prepare to be consumed by the darkness. These are the stories that haunt your dreams, the ones that whisper your name from the shadows. Imagine, if you will, a dilapidated toy factory, its windows boarded up, its paint peeling like scabs from a festering wound. Dust motes dance in the pale moonlight that manages to pierce the grime, illuminating rows upon rows of rusted machinery, silent and still. This is the scene that greeted our first witness, a young urban explorer named Jake, who dared to venture into this forgotten tomb of childhood. Armed with only a flashlight and a thirst for the unknown, Jake stepped across the threshold, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight like the whispers of the damned. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay, a cloying sweetness mixed with the metallic tang of rust. As Jake ventured deeper into the heart of the factory, his flashlight beam danced across broken toys scattered on the floor, their painted-on smiles now twisted into grotesque parodies of joy. And then he saw her, perched upon a dusty shelf, amidst a collection of porcelain dolls with eyes that seemed to follow his every move, was a single doll, different from the rest. It was a simple thing, dressed in a faded blue dress, its yarn hair a tangled mess. But it was the doll's eyes that held Jake captive. They were open, wide and staring, their glassy surfaces reflecting the weak light of his flashlight with an unsettling intensity. Jake tried to shake off the feeling of unease that clung to him like cobwebs. But something about the doll's unwavering gaze sent a shiver down his spine. He turned away, focusing his attention on the rest of the room, trying to convince himself that it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But the feeling persisted, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck that told him he was being watched. Unable to resist the pull any longer, Jake slowly turned back towards the shelf. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath catching in his throat as he saw it. The doll had moved. It was now facing him directly, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, its porcelain lips curled into a sinister smile. Panic surged through Jake, a cold sweat breaking out on his skin. He stumbled back, his flashlight beam wildly sweeping across the room, searching for a logical explanation, but there was none. The doll had moved on its own. Terrified, Jake fled the factory, the image of the doll's malevolent smile seared into his mind. He never returned, forever haunted by the memory of his encounter with the moving doll. Our next tale takes us deeper into the darkness, to a crumbling toy factory on the outskirts of a forgotten town. It was here that a group of friends, fueled by youthful bravado and a thirst for the unknown, decided to spend a night exploring the abandoned factory, unaware of the horrors that awaited them within. The group consisted of 4 friends: Emily the skeptic, Ben the jokester, Sarah the timid one, and Chris the leader. Armed with flashlights and a video camera to document their adventure, they stepped into the factory, the heavy metal door clanging shut behind them like the bars of a prison cell. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of decay, the only sound the dripping of water from a leaky pipe somewhere in the darkness. As they ventured deeper into the factory, their laughter echoed through the empty halls, a jarring counterpoint to the oppressive silence that surrounded them. They soon stumbled upon a room filled with shelves upon shelves of dolls, their painted faces frozen in expressions of perpetual joy, their glassy eyes staring blankly into the darkness. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, and even Ben, the jokester, felt a shiver crawl down his spine. As they made their way through the room, Sarah let out a gasp. She pointed to a doll sitting alone on a shelf, separate from the others. It was a china doll dressed in a tattered lace dress, its porcelain skin cracked and yellowed with age. But it was the doll's hair that truly unsettled them. It was as if it were real human hair, long and black, cascading down its back like a silken waterfall. And as they watched, they could have sworn they saw a strand of the doll's hair twitch. Chris, ever the skeptic, dismissed it as a trick of the light. But Emily, her curiosity piqued, stepped closer to the doll, drawn to it by an unseen force. As she reached out to touch it, a voice, barely audible above the pounding of her heart, whispered her name. Emily. Emily recoiled, as if burned, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around at her friends, her eyes wide with terror. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The others exchanged uneasy glances, but before anyone could answer, the voice came again, this time closer, more insistent. "Emily, Sarah, Ben, Chris." The doll's head turned slowly, its eyes, two black pits in its porcelain face, fixing on each of them in turn. A cold dread settled over the group, their blood turning to ice in their veins. The whispering continued, growing louder, more insistent, until it was a chorus of voices, all chanting their names. Terrified, the friends turned and fled, their screams echoing through the empty factory as they ran for their lives. They never returned to the factory, forever haunted by the memory of the whispering doll and the voices that called their names from the darkness. Chapter 3. The Following Doll. Our final tale is perhaps the most disturbing. A horrifying account of a lone explorer named Jessica who ventured into the depths of an abandoned toy factory, seeking solace in its isolation, unaware that she was walking into a nightmare. The factory stood on the edge of town, a looming silhouette against the dying light of the setting sun. Its windows were dark, empty sockets staring out at the world, and the only sound that reached Jessica's ears was the mournful sigh of the wind as it whistled through the broken panes. Armed with her camera, Jessica pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and a blanket of dust covered everything. As she wandered through the factory, her footsteps echoing in the silence, Jessica felt a growing sense of unease. It was as if she were being watched, her every move scrutinized by unseen eyes. She stumbled upon a room filled with half-finished dolls, their limbs splayed at unnatural angles, their painted-on smiles twisted into grotesque grimaces. And in the center of the room, sitting atop a dusty workbench, was a single doll, its porcelain face eerily lifelike in the gathering gloom. The doll was dressed in a tattered white dress, its once golden hair now matted in gray. But it was the doll's eyes that held Jessica captive. They were a piercing blue, and they seemed to follow her every move as if alive. Jessica tried to shake off the feeling of unease that clung to her like a shroud, but it was no use. The doll's unwavering gaze seemed to bore into her very soul, filling her with a sense of dread that she couldn't shake. She turned to leave, but as she did, she heard a soft thud behind her. Spinning around, her heart pounding in her chest, she saw that the doll had moved. It was now perched on the edge of the workbench, its lifeless eyes still fixed on her. Terrified, Jessica fled the room, her camera bouncing against her chest as she ran. She didn't stop running until she reached the relative safety of the factory floor, her lungs burning, her legs screaming for mercy. But as she caught her breath, she realized that she wasn't alone. In the shadows at the edge of her vision, she could have sworn she saw the doll, its porcelain face gleaming in the darkness, its blue eyes burning with an unholy light. Panic surged through Jessica, cold and consuming. She turned and ran again, her footsteps echoing through the empty factory as she desperately searched for an exit, an escape from this nightmare. She could feel the doll's presence behind her, closing in with every step she took. The air grew colder, the silence heavier, as if the very walls of the factory were pressing in on her, suffocating her. Just when she thought all hope was lost, she saw it. A faint glimmer of light coming from a doorway at the end of the corridor. With a surge of adrenaline, she stumbled towards it, her lungs burning, her legs on fire. She burst through the doorway and into the relative safety of the outside world, the setting sun casting long shadows across the overgrown yard. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, her hands shaking so badly that she could barely get the key in the ignition. As she sped away from the abandoned toy factory, she could have sworn she saw the doll standing in the doorway, its porcelain face twisted into a grotesque mockery of a smile, its blue eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light. Jessica never returned to the factory, forever haunted by the memory of the following doll and the chilling certainty that some toys are best left undisturbed. Thank you for braving the darkness with us tonight. We ventured into the chilling world of haunted dolls and explored the eerie remnants of abandoned toy factories. Remember, these are just stories, or are they? If you enjoyed these spine-chilling encounters, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more tales of terror. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a descent into darkness. Until next time, sleep tight and beware of the dolls that watch you from the shadows. Sweet dreams, or should I say nightmares.